Okay, gonna do another bit. Just it's only small. This one. Hopefully the video isn't too long. I try my hardest not to make them too long, but sure, look, it is what it is. I will say though, before we start, this entire thing I think is only for honors leaving cert. So if you're not in honors leaving cert, y'all can bounce. Congratulations. Um, for the rest of you nerds, this is what your teachers would probably refer to as completing the square. And it's basically, sorry, I know I have two on the screen at the moment. I'll start with this one. This one's the most basic version, I think. But the thing is here, basically, if you get a quadratic, any quadratic can be rewritten in this format. Now, they won't always use, you'll notice here they used A, H, and K as the three letters. Like X is just X. X is always chilling. X is there. X is here. But the three letters they put in as replacing the constants are A, H, and K. And in this question, our job would be to figure out what they are. You notice in this one over here, don't read too much into it, but you notice on the right-hand side, this one has A, B, and C instead. So they'll just swap the letters around, but it's the same, exact same layout, exact same format, and that's what completing the square is. Now, the problem that I have with this topic is that your teachers all teach you in a weird way that I'm not a big fan of. And your teachers will tell you what to do is they'll say, for this one, for example, they'll say the first x squared needs to not have a number on it. So what they'll do is they'll say, take out the 2 from everything. So basically, rewrite it like this. And you'll notice that this makes sense because basically if I multiplied 2 into the bracket, I'd end up back here. But they want you to do it in a way that the x squared won't have a number directly attached to it. Then they tell you to take, I think they tell you to take the middle number here, the minus 7 over 2, and half that. So on your calculator, you'd probably do 7 over 2 divided by 2. And you get 7 over 4. Well, minus the whole time, I should have said, but that's kind of okay. Then what you would do is you would put that squared. So I'll do minus 5 over here. Put that squared plus and minus version of it in the middle. So we'd say plus 49 over 16, because that's what that squared would be. Sorry, I did cut out that bit, I suppose. 49 over 16. And then you put the minus, right? And you're allowed to put in the plus and the minus because they would effectively cancel each other out. If you don't know what I'm doing, it's fine because I'm not going to do it this way. I'm just letting you guys know that there is a way like this. And if you guys prefer it that way, I'm going to do it this way so you can see it and validate it for yourself. Regardless of which way you do it, the answers should be the same. So if you want to try it your way when I'm doing the next question, I might do a third one, and you can just see that for yourself that you might be right. Also, I'm not particularly well, so I might be sneezing and coughing. Just be warned. I feel a sneeze coming on. Hold on. No, it went away. Never mind. I paused it because I thought I was going to sneeze, but it went away. You guys all have weird ways of getting rid of your sneezes, like saying watermelon or some dumb shit, but nah. But yeah, 49 over 16, you put in the plus, you put in the minus, and you're allowed to do that because they would effectively just disappear and bring you back to the original thing. So you haven't actually changed what the maths is. You've just kind of put in a plus 1 and a minus 1. Like, it makes no odds. You can add 1 and then take away 1. You just go back to where you start. And the reason why they ask you to do that is because if you do this method, they will then say this bit, you can complete the square and make that into x minus 7 over 4 squared. You'd have the 2 still chilling at the front. I'm going to do big square brackets to just highlight the difference. Then you'd be left with the minus 49 over 16 and the minus 5. The plus 1 gets incorporated into it's always the plus 1. It can never be the minus 1 there. Yeah, that's, well, unless for you guys, yep. And then what you would do is you would say 49 minus 5 is going to be minus 49 over 16 minus 5, sorry, is minus 129 over 16. Just wrote 5 again for some reason. Like so. And then we'd have this guy, we just leave as he is, because if we square him out, we're just going to go back to where we started, and we didn't want that. We wanted to tidy up the original guy, so we write like this. And then you just multiply 2 into everything, but it's going to look weird because when you multiply 2 in here, they expect you to just write it as 2 bracket x minus 7 over 4 squared, and then 2 by this guy. Like, they don't actually want you to multiply that one out, but 2 multiplied by this guy, if you do it in your calculator, you will get this. And that would be your answer, hypothetically, if you were to do it that way. We'd be saying the thing in the A position of the original guy is 2. The guy in position, they used H for this one. The guy in position H, you'll notice is minus 7 over 4. And the guy in position K is minus 129 over 8, right? That's what they'd want you to do if you were to do it the way the teachers tell you. I hate that way, though, because none of you really understand why you're doing that. And as a result, it's really just like almost an extra formula that you guys have to learn without knowing a lick of why you're doing any of it. The way I'm going to show you might be slightly longer than that, writing it down, but it's actually like 8 times actually easier, because all of the maths I'm about to do is maths you guys are all aware of just to begin with. If you prefer this way, go with it. I don't mind. I just don't think a lot of you understand what you're doing, and then you get like weird answers. You don't know what you're doing. How do you get the over 4? What do you do? Does the minus count? What do you do with the plus minus shenanigans? You aren't good at it. Not through your own fault, I suppose. They just didn't teach it in a way. Like, I'm sure the teachers know what's going on, and that's what the annoying thing is, that they just don't have time or the willpower to explain to you guys. So we're gonna do it the Graham way, the stupid scumbag maths way. And what I do is, instead of starting with your boy over here, again, I don't know if you can see that when I'm recording this. Instead of starting off with the original quadratic, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with your boy over here. And what I'm going to do is, I'm actually just going to do it over here. I was thinking of doing it underneath it. I'll just do it over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply it out. Now, if you remember BEMDAS, though, you do not multiply by the a first. You have to do the squared first, right? So the squared implies you have to write out the bracket twice. The plus k is just plus k. That's how I write my k's, just be warned, we're going to see that a lot. And then if you multiply out those two brackets together, some people might like to take it aside and split the brackets and do all sorts of shenanigans, but at the end of the day you should have this. Now, some people would argue, I would write 2xh, some people would write 2hx, it doesn't really matter. Plus h squared plus k. So everything should look like this. Your hx and xh might be the other way around in here, but otherwise it should look like this. Now you can multiply the a into the bracket. You get ax squared plus 2ahx plus ah squared. Now plus k, because the k is not being multiplied by the a. Don't forget, he wasn't in the bracket. He's chilling. But what we've done is we have made a quadratic. There's an x squared term, just like the x squared term up here. There's an x term, just like the way there's an x term up here. And what's uncomfortable for most people is the constant, which is minus 10 in the original, is actually 2 parts in this, which is fine. It just means we haven't actually done it yet. It'd be like if we said we knew what a, h, and k were. We would say the constant would be all of these numbers put together in the format that I have circled here. We'd square the h, multiply it by the a, and add it to the k. And that should give us the constant. So what we can do is we can say... we should say the x squareds match. So we can say ax squared must be equal to 2x squared. That has to be true, right? Because we want these to be the same quadratic, just the second one was written weird originally. So what we do is we compare the x squareds. We say the ax squared and this one has to be equal to the 2x squared in the original question up here, just in case I'm confusing people. Now, here's where I also get controversial. I don't even really write the x squareds. I just use the x squareds as like these two go together. Now, if you do write the x squareds, which is fine, you just have like ax squared is equal to 2x squared, and you divide both sides by x squared. You can do that, you know what I mean? Cancel out an x squared on both sides. You'll be left with a equals 2. But for me, I just say the a is what's in front of the x squared, the 2 is what's in front of the x squared. Therefore, I can just say a must be equal to 2. And that's that. One of the answers done. That's one of the letters done. And you notice it does match up with what we got over here. So that's a good sign. For the second one, the stuff in front of the x here should be equal to the stuff in front of the x here. Or with the x if your x isn't at the end, right? Don't freak out about that too. The x could be like in the middle somewhere. It depends. People might like to write it like this because it's alphabetical. AHX. But basically the stuff with the x is a 2, an a, and a h. And up here, the stuff with the x is a minus 7. Don't forget about the signs. You do need to include them if necessary. And the cool thing is we already know what a is, so we can sub that in. Because if it had been the 2 letters originally, we would have kind of been stumped, because you can't really do that unless you have more information. Luckily for us, we did have more information. We get 4h is equal to minus 7 over 4. I skipped a line. Sorry. 4h is equal to minus 7, and we divide both sides by 4, and you get minus 7 over 4. So h is equal to minus 7 over 4, which is also what we got over here in the other way. So both ways work. Now the last lad is just that the constant at the end, and for us it's a plus ah squared. I know my red circle is kind of covering it up, and I think that's a plus ah squared plus k has to be equal to the constant in the original, which is minus 10. But we already know what a and h are, so we can sub them in. And we can do it like so. Now we don't know what k is, so we have to leave them as k. When you do this on your calculator, you will get 49 over 8, I think. Then you plus k equals to minus 10. But if you want to get k on its own, you have to move the 49 over 8 to the other side. Make him a minus. Other people are starting to do that in different ways. Whatever way that makes sense to you. Like you can minus 49 over 8 from both sides if you're one of those people. And then when you do that in your calculator, you get minus 129 over 8, which you'll notice is what the k is over here. Hot dog, isn't that crazy? Yeah, that's it. That's the two different ways of doing the same question. I just think the way I did it on the right is much simpler. Like you do not have to think too much about it. There's no extra steps. Like that thing on the left hand side where you had to take half of the middle number after factorizing out the 2 and then squaring it and then putting the plus and the minus and then completing the square is a whole different thing from the where it goes into the green part, and then multiplying the 2 into the bracket also fucks people up. So I just don't like how the left hand side works. It would work perfect. It's not that you're too stupid to do it, it's just that given you like the amount of time you're allowed to understand some of the stuff and the fact that they kind of skip over not even explaining what some of the stuff means, just doesn't it just doesn't like lend itself to doing it that way. So I think the right hand side is better. Multiplying out this should be fine for people in Leaving Cert Honors. I know, like, you know, no one really might enjoy it, but you should be able to get down. There was even a couple of sixers I had before who just, they were like, well, Graham, if I square out this bracket and I multiply it by the h, or by the a, sorry, and have the plus k at the end, it will always look like the same thing. So some of them just learned the layout of this. I wouldn't necessarily advise it, but like they are technically correct. Basically though, if you do it a couple of times, you multiply it out, you get used to the kind of pattern of it, and you're kind of like, I know what I'm doing. It might be nice in the exam to have something to just kind of ground yourself, something nice and easy to just kind of give yourself a minute to do, give your brain a moment to relax, because your brain is going to be frantically panicking. Now, I kind of said we could write any quadratic in this form, but I didn't really explain why yet. And the whole point is, the cool thing about writing it like this is we would know if it's a positive. We know because it's a positive x squared to be a u shape, because that's a smiley face, whereas frowny face would be if it was a minus x squared, so that's fine, we know that. We also know how high it would be when it crosses the y-axis. We know that that would be a u shape, and we also know that it crosses the y-axis at a height of minus 10 on the y-axis because of this number here. That number on the very end tells you how high it will be when it crosses the y-axis. But that's all we can really tell from that quadratic, the way it's written, which is fine. However, if we write it like this, which you'll notice that I can do now, I can sub in the letters. That's one thing you want to watch out for. Here it just said, oh no, here it said actually write it in this form. So to actually finish off that question, I actually should have gone back and actually just written it out with the numbers subbed in. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes I might ask you to find A, H, and K, and then you just literally are done what I've done before. But because here they literally said write it out, you might get docked marks if you find the 3 letters, but just don't sub it straight back in. Like just that little extra bit is all that you need to do. But the benefit of writing it like this is, in the same way that the minus 10 will tell us the height of the on the y-axis when it crosses over it, we're going to look at this number here and this number here. And what we now know about this quadratic, we knew it was a U shape, we knew it crossed over the y-axis at minus 10, but what we can also tell is, what way am I going to do it this way? So let's say that's minus 10, and that's what we know from this one. Now the green stuff I'll put in, and that's the stuff that we know from this version. And what it means is the middle of the graph will be centered around the wrong sign of the first red box, if you get me. So instead of minus 7 over 4, it would be plus 7 over 4 would be the middle of it. Like the line down the middle would go through the x-axis at 7 over 4. And then this number here in the second red box tells you the lowest it goes down to. So the lowest height down here would be minus 129 over 8, which is like minus, if you want that as a decimal, right, that's going to be minus 16.125. And this one up here would be 1.75. But that's the benefit of it. You take the wrong sign of the first box guy, if you get me. And that means that the minus, or the plus version of that is where it's centered around. That's the axis of symmetry through the middle of it. And this tells you the extreme. So in this case, it was the lowest. In obviously in N shape, it would tell you the highest on the y-axis. But it's the same idea. Yeah, that's it. I will now go and do it on the graphing app just so that you can kind of see that I'm not talking complete shite. Yep. Hopefully I've done that right. And it's all, wow, magically just appeared. But basically, you'll notice their graph, well, it's not as good as mine. It shows you that it's exactly what I said. It's a U shape because of the positive x squared. It crosses the y-axis at minus 10. Now the turning point, which is the very bottom of it, occurs at 1.75 on the x-axis, and that kind of makes sense because it's underneath roughly what 1.75 would be. Well, it is exactly, but I just can't point to it exactly. And you notice the y value is minus 16.125, which is the lowest down it gets to. So that's the benefit of writing it like this, and that's what they will ask you to write it like this for, because you'll notice in the next question it says, hence write the minimum point of f. Well, we know the minimum point on the U shape has to be going through the middle of it and has to be the lowest down point, so therefore it must just be 1.75, 1.75 and minus 16.125. And now if you were to do the fractions, that's also acceptable. The 7 over 4, because you don't take the minus, don't forget to take the wrong sign of it. And then this when you take the correct sign, the minus 129 over 8. And that's just what the minimum point is. And that's the reason why we would write it in this format. That's kind of like a benefit of it. It's annoying because in leaving cert honors, you also have another way of finding the minimum point of a function, which is through differentiation and putting the first derivative equals to 0, but that's for a whole other video. We won't go into it. Explain why f must have two real... You can kind of tell from the context, though, if they ask you to write it like this, and you notice they say the word hence, but not or otherwise, so you have to literally just know this. If you did do it the differentiation way, because they didn't say it or otherwise, that would be no marks, I'm afraid to tell you. Explain why f must have two real roots. Well, there is two different ways of answering it. When I answered this first myself, the reason why I know there's two real roots is because we know the lowest down point is underneath the x-axis and it's a U shape, so it would go up go up to the left and go up to the right. So almost hit it at two different spots. And in English, if you wrote that would be acceptable. That we'd say, well, the minimum is definitely below the x-axis due to the fact that it has a minus y value. It has two arms on the U shape going up to the left and up to the right. So therefore it must go up and hit it twice. And a root is where does it cross over the x-axis. So therefore that would make sense. The maths way of doing it would be though, and I'll probably do some other video on this. I don't know what they call it though. Roots, solutions of roots, nature of roots maybe. But the idea is that b squared minus 4ac, if it has two real roots, has to be greater than 0. And if you take the b, a, and c from the very original guy up the top, the 2, minus 7, and minus 10 is your a, b, and c, like as if you're doing the minus b formula. You would end up with minus 7 squared minus 4 times 2 times minus 10. You'd end up with 49 minus 4 times 2. Yeah, I'm going to show you how to actually, this is the way we should properly do this. Now, obviously with these numbers on when you're doing it, you just throw it in your calculator. All in one go from the very start and get from here to here. But if you're multiplying, if you have three brackets like that, multiply the first two together or multiply the second two together, but do not try multiply all three together in your head. It can't be done. Don't try do loops. You're just going to confuse yourself. Oh look, it's 129, but that is greater than 0. Therefore yes, therefore yes, therefore done so, therefore class, right? Write the roots of fx in the form of p plus or minus root q. Writing the roots, finding the solutions is just doing the minus b formula. So they just wanted to do the minus b formula here. But the thing is, the minus b would have just been minus 7 because b was minus 7. Then you would have done the plus minus and the square root. And you could have done this all from scratch. But I think they were kind of laying it out there for people who could see, oh, well, I've already done, normally inside the square root in the minus b formula is b squared minus 4ac. I've already done that up here and found it to be 129. You know, if you were doing it from scratch, that's also okay. But you could say, oh, it would be the square root of 129, happy days. Um, all over 2a, which would have been 2 times 2, which is 4. And then your calculator will probably break that down into a nice enough way. We won't get too deeply into it. There was some shenanigans with that, but I'm not too pushed about it in all honesty. Once you get the original guide, this thing, that's what this whole video is about. Part A and possibly part B, you know, where I'm kind of explaining what the point is. I'm just going to do another one, I suppose. And you can, again, pause it and try it yourself. Well, actually, there's one thing we need to just get through first before we get to the goodness of it. Because it says fx is this, f dash x can be written like that. So before we even start, we need to get f dash x, because you notice this is a cubic, so it wouldn't actually work anyway. But if you remember differentiating it, because that's what f dash is, it means differentiate, find the derivative of. You notice you get this. That's what they want you to do, because they said f dash x can be written in this form. And I found f dash x, so I'm saying this can be written in this form. So I'm going to do this question for this f dash x, but I'm going to it makes no difference. It's just that they wanted you to differentiate first and then do it. So if you want to pause it here and give it a shot and see if you can do it yourself, and then check and see if you got the answer right, by all means. But otherwise, I'm just going to plow into it. Again, I'm just going to multiply this shit out. I'm not doing it the other way. That other way is stupid. Again, squaring those brackets, you need to do that first. So even if you need to take it to the side and do it separately, that's okay. Just do not multiply in by the a, and do not forget about the plus c. A lot of people forget about the plus c. Do not multiply in by the a until, I forgot about it, until the not very end, but you know what I mean, after you've squared out the brackets. And you notice that you would get this. Again, same kind of format, just slightly different letters, of course. So we're going to say the x squared has to match with the x squared. We're going to say the x has to match with the x, and we're going to say that the constant has to match with the constant. Now again, the constant is 2 parts, but that's okay. Now if we were to do the x squareds, we'd say 6 is equal to a. Done, right? The first one's always fairly handy. Second one is the x is equal to the x, so plus 12 is equal to plus 2ab. Again, I'm just leaving out the letters, like the x letters, because I don't care. I know you're all going to say a, b, and c are letters, but again, to me, those are numbers, because I know they are constants. It's just they're hidden, whereas x, in my mind, is a number because it's a variable. Don't stress, but just know that if I say that, I'm not being stupid. But, oh look, we already know what a is, so that's this. I don't technically need that bracket. That's a 6 before you all start freaking out. That means 12 is equal to 12b, but then we divide both sides by 12, and you just get b is equal to 1. Or 1 is equal to b. I know you don't like me writing it like that, but that's why I'm doing it, because you guys are all little nerds that need to learn that that's a perfectly suitable way of writing that. You're all with your, it needs to be on the letter needs to be on the left. It doesn't. That's just your own level of autism being kicked in. Now I wrote a squared on the C here. None of you has warned me, but just notice, I will just warn you guys, I fucked up. It's not supposed to be there. But now we know the a and the b, so we can sub them in here and here. Now again, be careful with this part here, because people keep messing up the squaring stuff. You cannot, for example, do 6 multiplied by 1 first and change it into a 6 squared. That is terribly incorrect. Do not do that. Just throw this in on your calculator. There's no need to stress about it. But BIMDAS or BEMDAS or BOMDAS, whatever you use, implies that we have to do the squared first. So it would actually work out to be minus 12 is equal to 6 plus c. You bring the 6 across, you make it a minus. You get minus 18 is equal to c. Again, you can minus 6 from both sides. Different people have different ways of doing that. So then, yeah, if we were to write that out, yeah, like you notice here, the difference is it just says find the value of a, b, and c. So we could leave this perfectly fine and we'd just be done. But the official way would, if I was to take this guy now and sub in the a, b, and c, it would look like 6 bracket x plus 1 squared minus 18. And it doesn't ask in this question about it, but if I was to think about this question, I would know that that means that this graph is a U shape. It crosses over the y-axis at a height of minus 12. Could not find it. Minus 12. Now it needs to be like this, but I'll explain this in a second. Minus 12. We also know that it is centered around -1 on the x-axis, because this is a +1, but we take the wrong sign. So on the x-axis, it's going to be -1 is where the middle of the graph occurs. So it'll be like down here somewhere. And we know the lowest height there would be -18. Now I know my graph is a bit jank, but yeah. Wrong sign of this, right sign of this. That's the middle x, that's the lowest y. There you go. That's the whole point of this. I might just make up one more myself and just do it. I couldn't really find, these are the two that I saw show up in the last 5 years or so. There might be one or two I missed. The problem is when I'm going through the exam papers, I'm just kind of looking for ones that are very basic, that are just kind of like on the nose. Sometimes they can get into sometimes it might be like a part C where you do a question in calculus or some shit, and it'll just happen to be another one of these. But let's say, I hate making numbers up because I'm going to get some weird decimals, just be warned. Let's say this, right? And I want to write it as, do you know what? I'm going to pick weirder letters, just because I need you guys to see that it doesn't necessarily have to follow the same kind of letterage every time. Multiply this out, you would get so. I think that is an issue though, where everybody not that you are doing it wrong, but you kind of fall into, getting used to a certain type of letter. Like particularly in junior cert, what people do is they kind of just assume it's always going to be an X or it's always going to be a Y, and then in the junior cert what they'll do is they mix up one letter and just hopefully just confuse everybody. Again, if you wanted to pause this and practice it, give it a shot. I maybe should have said that earlier, but I'm just kind of running through it because I feel like we're all kind of okay maybe, and I'm just going to hopefully just plow through this and you'll be able to see from the end result. Again, x squared is equal to x squared, so 3 is equal to g, done, one of the letters. X is equal to x, so -4 is equal to 2ag, but we know that the g is 3, so we'd end up with this. So we'd end up with -4 is equal to 6a, and we divide both sides by 6. We'd end up with -2/3 equals a, one of the letters. And then the constant 9 has to be equal to the constant, but again, the constant is written like so. Yeah, that's a 9, yep. We already know what the a and the g are. A is -2/3. It is 2b squared. There's a 3 being multiplied. There's a plus m. That means 9 is equal to, that's going to be 4/3 plus m, I think. Yep, I think so. And then you bring that over, make it a minus, and we'd end up with 23/3 is what m is, I think. I might have messed up the numbers there because I was just kind of flying through them in my head, because I kind of feel like at this point you're actually okay with it, and I kind of didn't need to do a third one. Also, I was afraid that by making up the numbers I get horrific answers. They're not too bad, actually. They're not honestly too bad. But again, now I know that that graph would be a U shape. It hits the y-axis at a height of 9, because that's what the value is here. We know that it's a positive x squared, so that means it's a smiley face instead of a frowny face. We know that the a is -2/3, and we take the wrong sign of that. Well, the x-axis is actually going to be down here. Take the wrong sign of that, and that's going to be the middle. So it's going to be 2/3 is what's in the middle. And we know that the lowest it goes down to is 23/3. That's the whole benefit of this. I think that's kind of it. That's, yeah, donezo, I think. Again, any questions about this, let me know. You can always just all text me and just contact me and ask me. If I fucked something up, let me know. You could type it in the comments, but I probably wouldn't see it. All right, good luck.